All right, now let's focus on other issues. The carbon market is a rapidly growing industry driven by the need to address climate change and reduce carbon emissions. The market has the potential to create new revenue streams and job opportunities while also contributing to the fight against climate change. You'd recall Vice President Yemi Osinbajo recently directed the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority to develop the country's first carbon market activation plan and drive engagement on the plan. He also argued that Africa could become the first truly green civilization given its status as the lowest carbon emitter and its relatively young population that could effectively deploy green manufacturing at scale. Now, what are the prospects for growth and opportunities for Nigeria's over 200 million people? We would be speaking with a sustainability expert, George Anegbunem. He would be analyzing and breaking this down for us to better understand. Thank you for joining us, George. Now, let's look at the carbon market potential for Nigeria. Perhaps we should start by understanding how this market works.
Okay, thank you so much, Omobalanle. Thanks for having me around once again. So, first of all, when we talk about carbon market, is a very broad and at times it can be a complex market, or it can be a complex scenario. But broadly speaking, carbon markets globally are divided into three. We have the carbon pricing, we have the carbon tax, we have the carbon credits, and the carbon offset. So when we talk about the carbon credits, which is also a part of the carbon market, carbon credits are the credits that people claim, mostly from the regulatory body, or let's say the government, for cutting down or removing or not emitting at all carbon dioxide, or call it greenhouse gas emission, which is normally represented as GHG. Then the carbon tax, on the other way around, can be seen also as the tax that people pay, for emitting carbon, mostly above threshold. So it's almost like what we call sin tax. I don't know if you've heard of sin tax.
Yes, I have.
The tax you pay on alcohol, cigarette, for some things, for activities that they believe have some social impact. So these are taxes they pay. Then when we talk about carbon offset, is also this has been developed and further broadened into diverse areas, like you see. I think there's what they call cap and trade, emission trading systems, ETS. So offsets are like activities or projects you deploy as an individual, community, or even government that would take out, reduce, or totally avoid the emission of greenhouse gas emissions. So the carbon market, let me sum it, has not yet been perfected around the world because of its complexity, because of the challenges the regulatory bodies have in bringing in efficiency and avoiding, can I say, double counting, or let me call it corruption. But we see that in years to come, a lot of innovations are being put into place to make it more or less efficient. Like you've seen, blockchain technology is now being introduced into this system to, avoid double counting, bring transparency, remove corruption, and also engender efficiency. Thank you.
Indeed, several information you just passed on right now, and I hope that we're able to break them down further before we wrap up the show. But let's talk about the main drivers of growth in the global carbon market and how they relate to Nigeria's potential for growth in this particular industry.
Okay, so the major drivers of growth, number one is policy, or call it regulations. For instance, carbon emission is strictly regulated in the EU, in places like EU, Singapore, in cities like California. You see, for instance, you have what they call California Clean Energy Act, California Clean Truck Act. California is one city or one state in America that I feel that has done so much in terms of policy. So you see, government is using policy as a tool to deepen this market, to drive this sector. They're saying, if you do this, look at what you are going to pay. For instance, in California today, there's an act that says from 2025, between 2025 and 2030, no, we don't expect anybody to sell or manufacture any truck that is not environment friendly or that is not green tech focused or aligned. Let me use that word. So policy is also is a major driver of this. So when government comes in and says, this is how we want it, there's nothing you can do about it. People go and begin to see how they and conduct their businesses.
Well, you know, you mentioned carbon tax earlier, and it's quite interesting because when it comes to carbon emission, Nigeria is one of the biggest defaulters. We know that, yes, the Western world also has its share of the problems when it comes to carbon emission. How do you see Nigeria benefiting from this, or wouldn't it work against the system, considering the fact that when it comes to carbon emission, we have not been able to get that right?
Okay, thank you very much. Let me start by...
Okay, I think we lost connection with George, but an interesting conversation there, looking at ways to launch or leverage on the carbon market and see how Nigeria can boost its economy from there. George, are you with us now? Okay. All right, and we would be continuing the conversation with George, but there are so many issues to look at here. He has talked about the fact that there are several parts or several sectors when it comes to the carbon market. He has talked about the carbon tax. He's talked about the carbon credit. He also mentioned the carbon offset. We will be breaking all of this down to see how Nigeria can take advantage of all of this to boost its economy and also capitalize on its renewable energy resources to attract investment in the carbon offset projects. George, can you hear me now?
I can hear you very well. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead with your contribution.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're talking about the drivers of this market, of this sector.
Yes, and we're talking about the carbon tax.
Okay, let me get back to carbon tax. I highlighted some things about carbon tax earlier on. So one of the ways that government have been able to deepen the carbon market, and not just the market this time, because remember that the end goal is to be able to achieve carbon neutrality. That's the 2050 net zero goal. Which is also like a policy side of it by introducing carbon tax. So what does carbon tax entail? Carbon tax means that if you emit so amount of carbon, maybe beyond in some jurisdictions, we have a threshold. If you exceed some certain thresholds, you are definitely going to pay so amount of money. So you are going to be taxed for emitting so amount of carbon. One is usually measured in tons. I don't know if you are with me.
Yes, I'm with you. I can hear you.
Yeah, so it's left for the policymakers to say so tons is what you tons we automatically make the emitter to pay so amount of money. And let me equally say that most governments have actually used this opportunity to increase their revenue streams. For instance, last time I was discussing with somebody and I was trying to dimension the impact of carbon tax on the Nigerian budget system. We are talking about the fact that we don't have enough to finance our budget. But I think by the time Nigerian government introduces carbon tax system, for instance, gas flaring is enough to earn so much billions of naira when this carbon tax system is introduced. you will see
so
a
George,
lot
hold
of...
on, please. Let me get you right. So what this implies is that industries, companies that emit carbon, that you know engage in gas flaring, would have to begin to pay this carbon tax and then contribute to the economy. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Not just them, even your own company. For instance, your broadcasting station or your media outfit, if you're burning diesel or petrol, and is measured, and we see that you have gotten to a certain level, you're an emitter, you have to also pay tax. If you are someone who is a manufacturing company, like let's say Dangote Cement, and you're burning diesel or other dirty sources of energy, we call them dirty energy or dirty sources of power, you are expected to pay a certain tax by regulation or policy. So these are the processes, or these are what the laws or the policies stipulate.
But we hope that when the policy is eventually drafted, that it wouldn't be a case of it favoring some people and then some people are bigger than the policy. Like we see in Nigeria, where the laws are applied to some people and then some people are just bigger than the law.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I like that question. Very, very interesting question and perspective as well. But, you know, I mentioned something earlier on when we started by saying that the carbon market is a very complex one, because how do you measure? How do you know that people are not double charged? How do you avoid double counting? And that's why lately we started seeing technology mostly in the blockchain sector of blockchain segment of technology. We are seeing, I don't know if you have heard of crypto carbon pricing. People are now using crypto or blockchain to tag to some of these systems, so that there can be transparency, efficiency, avoidance of duplication of taxation, or total avoidance of these taxations. So, but I believe that these are still in their novel stage. But in fact, I was also so surprised when I saw that even NFTs have been brought into this system. Tokenization of carbon credits have been brought into this system to ensure efficiency and effectiveness. Apart from that, we also have science-based, what we call science-based methods of measurement. So with science-based method of measurement, you are able to, you know, use to drive or to measure scientifically, at least to some level of accuracy and precision, to say that this is actually what this person emitted. Then when you bring it together with tokenization.
Okay, we're really having some form of interesting conversation here, especially looking at all of the potential, the benefits that Nigeria can tap from this carbon market. And, you know, George was just expatiating on the carbon tax, especially looking at the fact that industries, companies who now emit carbon, who, you know, engage in gas flaring. You even mentioned the broadcast industry or the media organizations that have to use diesel. In fact, most organizations use diesel in Nigeria. And of course, this would go a long way in boosting the revenue country, and by consequence boost the country's GDP. Thank you for staying. Thank you for joining us again, George.
Yeah, thank you for having me here.
Okay. So let's talk about how Nigeria can, you know, take advantage of its renewable energy sources to, you know, launch into this carbon market.
Okay, so like I was saying earlier on, the ways Nigeria can take advantage of this technology, of this carbon market. One, it's when properly harnessed, when properly conducted, we are going to see a kind of another revenue stream, mostly for the budget. we are also going to see that companies, organizations, individuals, communities will begin to live sustainably. Take, for instance, Canada. In this year's, okay, I think that was 2022 budget, Canada had factored in over $2.4 billion into their budget. That's going to come from this energy carbon market. Okay, let's talk about Singapore, Germany, the Eurozone, and all the likes. These areas, or even California that I mentioned earlier on, these are typical examples that Nigeria should emulate. It will broaden development. It will even increase technology development in terms of enhancing innovation. And it will also help us to achieve our 2050 net zero goal or target. But most importantly, what you are going to find is proper inflow of capital. So you are going to see inflow of investment and capital. You are also going to see it enriching the market, broadening the market, creating employment, creating assets. Because one of the challenges we have in this jurisdiction or in this domain is that asset creation is not as vast as what we see in developed countries like Singapore and the like. So you are going to see people trading carbon credits, or trading carbon credit, which will further broaden the financial or the capital market. So these are some of the advantages we are going to see in Nigeria in a very short space of time. So I think it's a very interesting development. It's a welcome development for a country like Nigeria.
But aren't you concerned, considering the fact that we've not even been able to fully take advantage of our renewable energy sources, and we're talking about moving on to carbon markets, which of course are not yet, well explored even in developed countries?
Okay, a very interesting question. The truth is that these two, both the carbon markets and the renewable energy resources, are all tied together.
Okay.
And what is their main goal? The main goal is to achieve carbon neutrality and proper decarbonization of the environment. So I believe that the carbon market, when we talk about market, people see opportunities. If government is not able to drive it through effective enforcement of policies, so when you bring market, when you introduce the carbon market system, you see that people will now be interested in, doing what normally they wouldn't have wanted to do. For instance, let me give you this instance. If I know, if your company, for instance, your media outfit knows that they will earn some kind of money from the government as a result of carbon credits by just removing their diesel engine and installing what's it called, solar system. I believe the management of your company will be so much interested in switching to a more sustainable and a cleaner energy system.
Indeed. I like the sound of that, because I just hope that we're able to fully implement this, because most times all of these policies and initiatives sound good on paper, but when it comes to implementation, that's where the bottleneck lies. What are the bottlenecks you see in the implementation of this?
Okay, exactly. I think this is a very interesting question. When we talk about considering the bottlenecks we faced in Nigeria, one of political willpower in implementation. No,
network shouldn't mess up at this time, because this is the crux of it. This is the most important part of this conversation, and I would really like to hear what George has to say about this. So let's hope that we're able to tie this up. George, can you hear me now? Good.
Yes. They are the Clean Act. So the political willpower is not there to implement. President Muhammadu Buhari says that before he leaves office, there's going to be full implementation. But we have less than 2 months before he leaves office, and we are yet something substantial flowing from that sector. Secondly, is that we lack the technology. We have not seen enough technology coming in to fix these frictions. So if we have the right technology, you see, not just technology that we have a technology, we mean efficient and effective technology. We should be able to see people switching from the traditional energy sources, from the traditional ways of living to a more sustainable way of living. Thirdly, which I feel is not really a challenge, but also an opportunity, or an opportunity in a challenge, is funds. Funds. So we don't have enough funds that actually sustain or support clean tech, that support sustainability.
So how do we deal with that? Because, of course, you have talked about the fact that there would be some form of benefit for companies that are already into renewable energy sources. But when it comes to funds, where do we get those funds from? That is the question to, of course, consider. Judge.
Okay, very interesting. So what we know today is that there are so many agencies, DFIs, development finance institutions, and all of that are looking for where to invest their money in terms of sustainability and climate change mitigation assets. For instance, we saw that African Finance Corporation, I think they just launched a fund which is about $354 billion fund lately. Is it $354 billion or $354 million fund? $354 million fund they just launched to ensure just to ensure enough proper decarbonization or achievement of carbon neutrality in Africa. There are some other funds like that. Maybe in Nigeria we have like 2-3 right now, but it's not still enough. But the funds, talking about the funds, most of these development finance institutions, World Bank, International Finance Corporation, name it, they are just ready, waiting for people to take action so that they can begin to begin to bring in their funds, because a major pain point in the world right now. Okay, take for instance, NZAM, Net Zero Asset Managers. There's a group of persons they call NZAM, Net Zero Asset Manager. These are asset managers that are looking for how to decarbonize their portfolios. They're looking for, can I say, individuals, organizations that are really interested in these areas. They are also looking for sustainability-focused assets where they can put their monies, where they can channel their funds to be able to decarbonize their portfolios. So the opportunities are endless. We can't even start enumerating them. In fact, there's a research that says that between now and 2030, we are expecting over $20 trillion to flow into this space. But unfortunately, we don't have a lot of people trying to take position to attract these funds from Nigeria. Maybe because the government is lax about it, or they've not been aggressive with that. Maybe because organizations are not even talking about it. How many organizations in Nigeria have a sustainability agenda? How many of them have a sustainability strategy? So by the time we really wake up and begin to push for these things, you will see how funds will flow to us. So I don't think funding is a major challenge right now in Nigeria because, like I said earlier, there is a great attraction. Sustainability, climate change mitigation, carbon neutrality, attainment goals, all these are money magnets. So it's just for people to wake up and say, this is what I want to do in this sector.
The willpower, as you said, the political will. Let's get your final thoughts as we bring this home.
So my final thought is that the carbon market holds a very huge opportunity. The carbon market holds, the government has to do what it has to do, but the private and the corporate sectors are mostly the ones driving these very important innovation. Let me use that word. in most countries like Singapore, like I mentioned, Germany, in the Eurozone, in America, in Canada. Yes, we need policies, but we need to see corporate players come into this space, SMEs, communities, individuals come into this space and begin to break some China. We believe that if it receives the right attention in a short space of time, Nigeria will become a major player, mostly in Africa, or let me say the West African sub-region.
Thank you so much for the expository contribution this morning, George Anegbonim, sustainability expert and analyst. Hopefully, all of these vivid and beautiful pictures that you have painted about the future of the carbon market in Nigeria eventually come to play. We really appreciate you for your time and have a great weekend.
Thank you so much, Omobalande. Thanks for having me around. Enjoy your weekend.
We'll take a break now. We will be back with the Global Oil Update. Stay with us.